justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now.
Be curious to see, just like at the State of the Union, how much clapping we see from Biden and Harris. Nowhere to run or hide from scrutiny on how they react.
We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
There's the two sound bites in the first 5 lines.
Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago. Or more recently, Los Angeles, where we are watching fires still tragically burn from weeks ago without even a token of defense. They're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But we can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural. And very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states. And the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor, we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices.
Yeah, and this is a little more programmatic, right, than a normal State of the Union? I mean, an inaugural address?
The inflation
Yeah, I mean, I thought,
thought
the beginning of it was kind of classless and gratuitous, but yeah, I mean, he's just kind of like relisting what he said yesterday at the Cap One Arena and what he said on campaign speeches. Like, so far, there's no bigger theme, to this speech.
Yeah.
It frankly, Mark, feels pretty small. That this does not feel like a big moment with the speech.
America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have. The largest.
I will say, Mark, one interesting thing, when they go to this view here that Fox has, you can see the facial reaction so much better than you could when it's on the west side of the Capitol outside. You can really see it.
Right to the top.
Yeah.
And export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal, and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. In other words, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice. We will build automobiles in America again at a rate that nobody could have dreamt possible just a few years ago. And thank you to the auto workers of our nation for your inspiring vote of confidence. We did tremendously with their vote.
It's amazing how, as you just suggested, how partisan this is.
Of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our Treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before to restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government. My administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency.
You know, on one hand, it's unfortunate it's so partisan. On the other, you know, he's doing what works for him, and he's mostly talking about things that are popular.
Yep.
But still, kind of incredible.
After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
Especially when he's had 4 years to think about it.
Yep.
Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents. Something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law.
Be curious what Democrats say.
And we
They
are
re-energize
going to
them.
bring law and order back to our cities. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Mark, in the chat, they're saying this is more to MAGA than the country. That's a good point.
Oh, yeah. Almost the whole thing. First Trump White House email has gone out with a kind of a clear listing of the priorities. Nothing surprising.
From our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments while on duty. It's going to end immediately. Our armed forces will be freed to focus on their sole mission, defeating America's enemies. Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families.
All right, this gets Biden and Harris off their feet, on their feet rather. I mean, obviously, none of us are surprised this is the tone, but
I'm a little surprised.
Not what. Well, but not in it. You're maybe surprised. You're not shocked about that.
Nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs.
Those are two lines never before in a presidential inaugural address.
President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. So as we liberate our nation, we will lead it to new heights of victory and success. We will not be deterred. Together we will end the chronic disease epidemic and keep our children safe, healthy, and disease-free. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
Again, very much like a State of the Union, the Republicans on their feet for a lot of these lines, and the Democrats sitting there and stoically. By just a moment.
Proudly, we will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mark, you're muted.
Extraordinary speech in a lot of ways. And we'll keep watching the scenes in the room. About a half an hour. And we'll bring in Senator John Sununu, New Hampshire, Republican. Just to tell you, let's put up briefly, then come back to the room, but put up the White House website. White House website is live, the new White House website. There you see the top of it, and there's lots of content there. Go back to live, please. They sent out their first email already. And there's information on the executive orders, some of them, nothing that's surprising. The big variable remains the border stuff is all as you'd expect. The big variable remains what's happening with tariffs. It continues to be a wide range of things. I continue to believe that whatever he says on tariffs today doesn't matter because he'll take it all back if he needs to, and he'll add to them if he wants to. But people are obsessed with what the first bid is. Lastly, people are resurrecting on X the fact that Joe Biden expressed concern that Donald Trump was going to pardon his family preemptively before he left office. Now, I'm sure the Biden people will say, well, our family did nothing wrong, and the Trumps did, and that's why the hypocrisy, apparent seeming hypocrisy, is okay. But that story is a very big story. Senator, I want to hear from you on everything, but just talk about what you thought of the speech, which again was more partisan and programmatic than a normal inaugural address.
Yeah, looking through the scroll of the chat, I think people got it, right? Clear, a lot of clarity. It did sound a little bit more like a campaign speech in parts, but more focused and clear than most of his campaign speeches. I'm surprised how short it was. I think there's quite a bit shorter than Biden's 4 years ago, very short for a Trump speech. Yep. There were, I wouldn't call them unifying themes, but sort of broad themes and with regard to being gracious about the support he received from non-traditional Republican communities of color, Hispanic community, et cetera. I think a lot of the issues he talked about, well, they may be, quote, MAGA themes, but they're kind of 70-30 issues in America. Getting rid of the chaos at the border, having sensible immigration policies and control, stronger national defense, dealing with crime. I mean, these are issues that cut across economic and racial and geographic lines. So, for Trump, that's a pretty good speech. One observation about the executive orders, I think this is very important because these executive orders are going to create a sense of momentum for the president. They are going to be welcomed and embraced by Republicans in Congress. It's going to infuse them with a little bit of life and energy. I'm sure a number of them will be taken to court. Some may be even overturned. Mm-hmm. But the scale is what impresses me. And Trump's first month of office in 2017, Trump did about a dozen executive orders. First month for Biden, he did about 30. From what we've seen here, Trump is going to do over 100. in the next week or two. And so there's a breadth of policy making and activity here that I think is quite unique. And to their credit, they seem very well prepared to execute.
Senator, thank you for all that. Really interesting. If the speech is supposed to have a goal or goals, what goals do you think he achieved with that speech?
I really just setting the right tone within his own party. We talk about the idea of inaugural addresses being unifying. They're really not. They set some tone, and I think for him, this was actually terrific tone, more clarity than you usually get from Donald Trump. And it was short. And honestly, brevity should never be undervalued because if you're a partisan, if you're on the other side, if you're a Democrat, if the president goes for an hour or an hour and 15 minutes, as he's done many times in the past, you're just antagonizing the opponents. So in many ways, this was a very, and I'd love to hear Dan's opinion. This is a very palatable speech if you're a Democrat. At least he didn't overstay his welcome. So I tend to dismiss the importance of inaugural addresses, State of the Union addresses, like one of the most horrible pageants in the American political system. But so as these things go, I think it was good. But for me, this day is going to be about two things. The momentum that he might create with his executive orders, and the dominant news story of the president, former President Biden, preemptively pardoning his whole family, which I shouldn't laugh, because it's a very serious thing, and it's controversial, for a lot of reasons. But amazing that he did that at 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes before he departed office.
Senator, just on that, what do you think? What do you think the implications of the pardoning of the family will be?
Just the last straw, not even last straw, the last step down in a very fast and precipitous decline in the legacy of Joe Biden. It's truly unfortunate. But I will say, to me, the most interesting part of that speech, and the most interesting objective laid out by Donald Trump, was his determination to make the Department of Justice unbiased, transparent, and equal in its application of the law. If he can follow through on that, I think that will be one of the most important things in his legacy. And conversely, if he doesn't, if he allows it to suddenly shift and start going after Democrats, that will do a lot of damage to the American democratic institution.
So the New York Times, perhaps not wanting to get off on a different foot here, calls that speech dark. And there were parts of it were dark, but there were plenty of parts of it that were not dark. We want to get you all in the conversation. So some of you have your hands up. If you'd like to be in the conversation, particularly if you've never been part of a two-way talk before, please raise your hand. We'll get to you in just a minute. I want to cover a few more topics with Dan and the Senator, and then we'll get to you. So again, if you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. Dan, just you briefly on the pardons. Will Democrats denounce this, or it's going to be lost in the mix? I mean, in other words, some of them will be asked to, but do you think Democrats will proactively, and should Democrats proactively denounce it?
Yeah, I've been monitoring X here throughout the last couple hours, and I haven't seen any either denounce or support. There's silence, which I think tells you everything you need to know. I would imagine that some people will defend their colleagues, some of the members of the January 6th committee being pardoned, just because there's kind of a club nature and like you defend your own in the party. I would be stunned if there's not denouncement of the family members being pardoned, and potentially even the staff being pardoned on the January 6th committee. Like, some will definitely denounce it. I don't know how you defend it. Like, pardoning your own family when they haven't been accused of anything, Jim Biden's been kind of dragged a little bit into some of the allegations of corruption, but I haven't seen anything yet that would say like he's in real serious trouble. Not to say that maybe he isn't, but I just think this is a horrific precedent.
Yeah. The inclusion of Val Biden is interesting, right? Because as far as I know, she's never been in these stories. The reality is, because the press has done barely any digging, with few exceptions on this, just based on the role she plays in Joe Biden's life and has historically, and her closeness to her family, it seems, in light of him including her, she probably was involved in some of these things with Hunter and with the brothers, and not accusing her of breaking the law or necessarily even of doing something wrong. But it's hard to imagine that the keeper of Biden Inc. wasn't part of Biden Inc. Making money. And again, to include her in the pardon is kind of incredible, kind of symbolically incredible. Senator, I wanted to ask you about one other thing, which is the billionaires getting those great seats. Like they got better seats than like congressional leaders. They got as good seats or better seats than former presidents. What's the symbolic or substantive implications of that?
That's a great question. What it really means, right? What the real implication is, other than it's entertaining to us. It's obviously it is an indication of where Trump holds them within his orbit. They are more important to him than most all of his cabinet nominees. True statement.
Yeah, and congressional leaders.
Yeah, so I think it was Billy Tozin who once, a former member of Congress, who once made the observation that it's really good to have people do favors for you in Congress, which is a little counterintuitive, right? Why would I want them, if they do me a favor, then I'm indebted to them. But if they do you a favor, they now have a vested interest in your success, because they want you to become powerful so that when the favor has to be repaid, you have real power, right? So what I think is interesting about this is by showing up, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Cook was interesting to see him in. I think I saw Sergey Brin kind of slip into the back there at one point.
He's in town.
Yeah, so they now have an additional vested interest in seeing Donald Trump succeed. A lot of people talk about, what does Trump owe them? What's he going to give them? What's he going to do for them? Then those are interesting questions. But it's more like, well, that's interesting. What are they now going to do? What will their role be in helping to ensure his success? Because they showed their faces there, and they're going to be associated with this presidency. So they are really going to want to see him succeed, and not just in a way that helps them or their company, but they're going to want him to succeed because it affects their reputation.
They are all. He has made it clear to at least some of the CEOs he's met with. He's made clear to them that he's counting on the American private sector to step up, and that he does consider his success somewhat dependent on their investing and growing and adopting America First policies and not woke policies. All right, want to bring folks in. We don't want to squelch anybody's speech, and we want to hear from you, but I want to try to get a lot of folks in. I'd love for you to just start. Tell us where you are. Tell us briefly what you thought of the speech, and then whatever you want to ask. But again, let's ask people today to be brief. Lots of hands up, and I want to get a lot of folks in so we get a good sampling of what people thought of the speech and of the Biden pardons and the executive orders. Anything else on your mind? So, Mark, welcome in. Again, tell folks where you are, what you thought of the speech, what's on your mind.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Mark in Maryland. If I'm honest, I thought the speech perhaps was a bit small. It could have been more inspiring and a bit more unifying. I hope the president looks for those opportunities in the future. I guess what's on my mind, a question about the pardons. Now that Hunter Biden, Mark Milley, Fauci have all been given pardons, there is probably a value in having some level, especially on COVID, some level of blue ribbon panel, do a real post-mortem about how the government addressed COVID. Fauci's input would be invaluable. Because he's now been given a pardon, Does he have any mechanism to avoid giving truthful testimony in such an investigation?
No, only if he wants to be in contempt of Congress. So there's a big open question about the origins of COVID and how the government handled it, about the all the investigations of Donald Trump, about the investigation into Hunter Biden, and about the operation of all sorts of parts of the government, which is what will Donald Trump ask his government to do in doing investigations? I doubt Donald Trump will do a blue ribbon panel. I think he'll want his people to do it if he does. And then what will the Republican majority in the House and the Senate do? They could spend a lot of time doing those investigations. Normally, you do those investigations to politically embarrass your opponents. But there's no one left the Democratic side to politically embarrass. I say that with several meanings in mind. And they've got a lot of other business to do. Now, sometimes you do them for good government. And I would love if they did an investigation, for instance, into the origins of COVID and into how the federal government handled it that was not meant to embarrass Democrats, but was actually done to get to the bottom of it. I can't tell you how many people I hear from who say they voted for Donald Trump because of COVID along the way, either the cover up, the policies connected to public health. It's a huge issue. So I think there's room there. I worry about, as anyone with eyes and ears would, that Donald Trump will want these investigations done with vengeance as opposed to fact finding. Senator, and then Dan. Oh, sorry, you're muted. My apologies. Go ahead, Senator.
No, it's just habit that I always mute myself. Look, I don't want Congress to spend a lot of time rehashing COVID, mostly because they don't have the time to waste, and because Congress and committees tend to be very inefficient, I think, at conducting this kind of an investigation. I don't think there's any right answer here, but if it were up to me, if I were president, I would have an element of the intelligence system, maybe the DNI's office, put together sort of the best and most comprehensive evaluation of the genesis of COVID, and make that fully public. A thorough narrative of how this happened, and that could include some of how our government reacted. But I don't think there's a lot to be gained by continuing to litigate who mandated who to do what, when, masking and schools and all the rest. I mean, I think we've litigated that through communities around America. And again, I don't think there's much to be gained from it, either in terms of information or politically. And hopefully the administration and Congress are wise enough to realize that.
Dan,
Senator,
before you jump in, Senator, hold on one second. Mark, hold on one second. I'll go to back to the center with the question for me, then Dan, then Mark, you again. Senator, I know you think they shouldn't. Do you think they will?
I mean, I imagine some subcommittee will, whether it's a health subcommittee or an oversight and investigation subcommittee, permanent select committee in the Senate on investigations. I mean, there are lots of tools to do this if a member of Congress, particularly a committee chair or subcommittee chair, really wants to pursue it. So I think it's likely something will be undertaken on COVID. Yes.
Dan.
I actually think the American people actually would want this. I think there is a lot of people who feel like we didn't get a lot right. They don't, not only do they want to know kind of where it came from and stuff, but I think if something like this were to happen again, we made a lot of mistakes. A bunch of them, I think, were honest mistakes. But whether, Senator, to your point, Congress has so many things to do, margins are so narrow, et cetera. It may not be them, but outside groups with, the ability to get information, something. I actually think Trump would get credit for doing it, even if it's a partisan report.
Mark, go ahead.
No,
Real
just
quick, though, please.
yes, just to say, I think Dan's exactly correct. This is less for me about litigation and more about what do we learn to mitigate the effects of whenever this happens again. And the last thing I'll say, Mark, is you've done the nation a real service by establishing the two-way platform. Best wishes to you and your family for a great 2025. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Grateful to have you here and help us spread the word, but appreciate those kind words. Thank you. All right. Again, I'll ask folks, try to be relatively brief. Tell us where you are, what's on your mind, and I'd love to hear from folks what you thought of the speech. Katie, come on in. Tell folks where you are, what you thought of the speech, what's on your mind after you unmute.
Hi, everyone. I have to be really brief. I thought the speech was okay. I wasn't overly impressed. I have a question, and then I have something to say to Dan. Just watching his face when we talk about the pardons reminds me of the way I felt like every time Donald Trump would do something ridiculous. I felt like when he was first president, I would sigh like every day. And so I feel like watching Dan's face, like talking about the pardons, I just feel for you, where you're like, oh, I love my party, but I just feel so sad right now. So I feel
well said.
Great point. Great point. I will say there are some prominent liberals who have blasted the pardons on Twitter. I just saw while
Are they? Okay.
Talking. Yeah. So there's some, I mean, not universal, but there are people who blasting it, sounding like they're Donald Trump, like how horrifying. And like I saw one liberal say, Joe Biden is ending his presidency with the only thing he actually cares about, Joe Biden. Go ahead, Katie.
That was really it. I was surprised when he mentioned it that the cartels had not been designated as a terrorist organization until now. So I thought that was pretty great. I'm a nurse, so the opiate crisis is right in front of me. So I think that might be something that would be really helpful in helping us, get people off these horrible drugs like fentanyl, get that stuff off the street. So I'm really grateful for that.
Let's dip into Fox just for a minute because Britt's talking.
Thank you, Katie.
Britt thinks. Thank you, Katie. Senator, do you have a question for Katie? Katie, stay right there. Senator, do you have any question you'd like to ask Katie?
Do I have a question? No, sorry.
No.
I do not.
Dan, do you? Dan, do you?
No, I think that's an interesting point that she makes about the classifying them as terrorists.
All right, let's see what Britt has to say real quick. Katie, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And I think the speech was full of quite big promises. I think he feels he has a tailwind because of the decisive nature of the election, narrow though the margin ended up being, and because he has Congress under Republican control, albeit narrowly there as well. I think he has high hopes that he can bring a lot of this to bear, and a great deal of it, I think, or at least a large piece of it, is represented in the executive orders he is issuing today to cover a multitude of topics, which are available to him because the previous president relied on so many executive orders, which can be revoked. A new president can revoke the old president's orders, and Mr. Trump is going to do that in spades today.
Okay, you can mute Fox, but leave the box up.
Thank you,
you
Brett.
see President Trump there walking through the halls of Congress, headed to the lunch, I believe. Interesting, again, chatter on Twitter. There's, enthusiasm from Republicans about the speech. As I said, there's some negativity about the Biden pardons. And as we move to people starting to analyze the executive orders, we've talked today and previously about whether doing 100 or 200 on one day is going to dilute the messaging. The White House put out sort of a four headlines that they say the executive orders basically come over, making America safer, dealing with woke, and more prosperous. Just sort of the big Trump themes. But they don't care. I just got a text from a senior person in the Trump orbit who's been involved in the planning, and he was watching, or at least heard what we were saying, and he said, they're flooding the zone today. He said because tomorrow we'll have more. Trump really wants to have this shock and awe of getting them all out. So expect there to be more of everything and a lot of executive orders today.
Hey, Mark, right. One quick reaction to one thing Britt said. Britt mentioned, Hume, the tight margin in the House. And, we've talked about this a lot, but just to go through a little bit of quick math, I think the margin is like 3 votes now. But Waltz is going to take his job very shortly, creating a vacancy. Stefanik at some point will resign her seat to take her appointment as well, leaving literally a 1 vote margin for the Republicans in the House. in some ways, we've talked about this before, that's partly unifying because every Republican knows that they have to be on the team. But at a certain point, the actuarial table comes into play. And Congress is a big place with a lot of older members. The potential for a Republican to pass away in the next 4 or 5 months before these vacancies are filled is very real and could absolutely throw the House into a very chaotic and uncertain situation. And that sounds a little far-fetched, but if you saw the headlines today in Pennsylvania, a Democratic member of the House in Pennsylvania passed away, and instead of the Democrats having a 1-seat majority, now it's tied. Now, obviously, this will be resolved through a special election, but a 1-vote margin is incredibly frail when you consider the inevitable natural turnover of members of the House.
Yeah, and COVID. Someone asked in the chat about if the House is tied. It's a question of who gets to be the speaker, and who knows how that would be resolved. Senator, you probably don't remember, and I may have mentioned this to you in a previous conversation recently, but you're the one who first made the point to me that in some way, this I've been long ago, a decade ago, I think maybe when you were in the House, that a narrow majority is in some ways better, like a razor thin majority is in some ways better than a 10 or 15 seat majority because, and Donald Trump alluded to this yesterday, probably lost on most, but I'm kind of obsessed with this issue. He alluded to it yesterday in his speech at the rally. He said, we got a very small majority. That means we got to vote unified. And that's an easier argument to make than horse trading with the 11 who care about this issue and the 14 who care about this issue. You just basically say, this is the bill. We don't got a choice. Everybody's got to vote for it. But you're right that the whole thing is premised on nobody dying or getting an offer to be the commissioner of the NFL or getting COVID or whatever it is. And Speaker Johnson's going to have to manage that possibility. Chris Taylor, welcome in. Katie ignored my request to say where she is, even though most people know because Katie's been on. But Chris, tell folks where you are and what you thought of the speech and what's on your mind.
I'm Northern Idaho. This time the sun is up a little later in the day. Speech was terrible at the beginning. It finished great. So I just thought it was partisan, kind of scary hack at the front, and then it panned out fine. My question is around the preemptive pardons. I don't know if there's precedent for that, but is that something that they could actually take to the Supreme Court and get a kind of final answer?
Well,
yeah, I think the answer is you can take anything to the Supreme Court. This Supreme Court, I believe, would say, nope, they're fine. I think they would view the power of the presidential constitutional power of pardon to be very broad and not something that they would want to try to limit or interfere with.
I agree with everything you said, except Senator, you passed up the opportunity to use my favorite word that's used to describe the pardon powers of the presidency as the courts and scholars have generally viewed it. Unfettered. It's considered unfettered, which is a word not used very often. Dan, thoughts on the pardons?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's why they've always been kind of used judiciously because they are so absolute. And now you are broadening it out to, use it casually a little bit. And that is a little worrying.
Yeah. Chris, I'll tell you an irony. The Clintons were worried that Donald Trump would prosecute them. And they didn't. I don't know that Donald Trump would have. My guess is he wouldn't have. He would not have asked his Justice Department to do it, and Pam Bondi wouldn't have done it. And what this will do is revive interest in figuring out, particularly, I think, for Val, who has gotten favorable. She's very nice. She's great with reporters. She's gotten almost no scrutiny. And as I said before, now there's, I think, going to be reason to say, well, why'd Val get that? And so he may bring more damage to his family having done this, not because the courts, won't overturn it, because I don't think they will overturn it, because I don't think they will, but because, questions will now be asked, at least by some. Chris, any family updates for us?
No, just update is Isaiah's in DC doing the festivities, but
yeah. For those who weren't watching, Chris's remarkable son was on when he was down in Palm Beach presenting at Mar-a-Lago. By coincidence, someone who's a member of this community was there and said your son's presentation. I think he gave multiple presentations actually, but his presentation he said was extremely good and compelling, and we look forward to more. I'll say someone asked me to write a profile of Isaiah for a magazine, so I haven't asked him yet if he'll cooperate.
Well,
but
last week you had a Mother Jones and other of such magazines do profiles, so it's been happening. That whole El Segundo kind of tech bros community is getting lit up right now.
Senator, were you on for Isaiah's appearance? You probably weren't.
I was not. Sorry, I missed it.
He's 26, right, Chris?
25.
26? 25.
Almost
So he's
26.
old enough. He's old enough to both rent a car without a parent co-signing and present on the creation of mini nuclear reactors at Mar-a-Lago. And he didn't graduate from high school. He's almost smart enough to be a Sununu. That's how smart he is. All right,
That's a good compliment. Thank you.
Chris, give him our best and tell him not to cooperate with any profiles till I decide if I'm going to do mine.
Nice.
All right, thank you, man. Good to see you. All right, so here's an email from a very senior Democrat. I can't identify the person, who's very close to Joe Biden. Okay, very senior, very close. Biden totally confirmed the criminality of his family with the pardons. Democrats said 4 years ago Trump would pardon his family, and he didn't. Biden did. Disgusting. Okay, I wish I could tell you who it is because you'd find it highly impactful. It's not Chris Dodd. I'll say that.
I wasn't going to say that name out loud, but that was the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah, it's not Chris Dodd. I thought you might, so I preempted that. But it's someone almost as close. All right, Elise, welcome in. Thank you for joining. We know where you are. You're in the Silver State.
I am in the Silver State. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Tell us what you thought of the speech and then what's on your mind.
So I thought the speech was fine. I wasn't surprised by anything he had to say. It was everything he said on the campaign. One thing I did personally think was gross was he said he wanted to be a unifying president who, with this speech, erased trans and non-binary people. And I thought that was just pretty gross. I actually wanted to make a comment about Amy Klobuchar opening the inauguration. I thought it was really interesting for years on the campaign trail and outside of the campaign trail. Democrats have been calling Donald Trump a Nazi and a threat to our natural, or our, sorry, my cat is saying hi. A threat to our democracy.
We're very pro cat here. Cat can be in the video.
But you know, for years they called Trump a Nazi, a threat to our threat to the American national democracy, and then today we're waving him in. Get this man inaugurated, and the theme of the day is enduring democracy. And I know
Elise, wait for the J6 pardons.
Oh my gosh, I wish. It makes me feel like nobody believes anything that they say, and they just get people twisted up. And I hope that and I know this won't change, but I hope that going forward, Democrats specifically, they think before they start talking about all the problems with Republicans, because to call these people Nazis and then literally usher them into the White House just looks so stupid. It just looks so stupid.
Elise, hold on. Okay, before Dan and Senator respond, we're looking here at Joe Biden and Jill boarding Marine One, presumably for the last time, being sent off by the Trumps, and they're headed to Joint Base Andrews, and then I understand it, they're flying to California for some R&R. And obviously, huge question about how Joe Biden is going to spend his days, not just in the next few days, but in the coming weeks and months. Notable, I think, because we hit on it a little bit, but with Joe Biden sitting right there, was Donald Trump, did he go out of his way at all to be gracious in criticizing the Biden administration? Maybe 2%, but it was kind of that. If you're looking for something to criticize about the tone of the speech, I think you could argue that. But again, the Biden pardons don't make Joe Biden at this particular moment a very sympathetic figure. I don't think too many people are going to rise and say, how dare he insult Joe Biden while Joe Biden was sitting right there, when Joe Biden at the later than the 11th hour in 48 minutes, issued those extraordinary pardons. Dan, response to Elise and then Senator Sununu.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's why some of us were saying in October and September that it was a terrible idea to just call him a Nazi and stuff like that. I know Democrats would probably, point out that Trump didn't treat either Obama or, Joe Biden very kindly either. But this is why people lose faith and confidence in elected officials, because they see them as total hypocrites. Whereas in the business, people shrug their shoulders and just kind of laugh and say, that's politics. But voters, that's why they get disgusted.
Yeah, totally agree. And Joe Scarborough, was probably the most visible media personality that went down this path of using this kind of language. And very much to Dan's credit, he called it out at the time. It wasn't appropriate, and it wasn't useful. It wasn't meaningful, no matter how much you don't like Donald Trump or any other politician. To vilify anyone at that level, it's such a bad precedent in terms of language and callousness of public discourse. But it also reflects a total lack of understanding of how the political process works. We have winners, we have losers. You've got to build coalitions. Even over the last 4 years, a huge amount of what was done in Congress was done on a bipartisan level. Within Congress, the one observation I'll make about language and the tone of debate that I think has really been lost over the last 8 or 10 years and has really contributed to a lot of the callousness is it has become commonplace for members of Congress to question one another's motives. And I was taught way back in the day, this is the one thing you never do. And as a member of Congress, if someone got up in a debate, as they did on more than one occasion, and said, I was wrong, I was dumb, I was ignorant, I was, misstating things, that's fine. That's part of debate. But if you start to question your opponent's motives, you are basically assaulting their character and tearing down their character. And it's very hard for the tone of a debate to recover from that. And it's a subtlety to a lot of people's ears, but it's 100% true. And it's become all too commonplace today.
Elise, thank you for joining. Great question. I love the way you framed it. So thank you for that. Manu Raju of CNN got up to Bill Clinton, I guess maybe without a camera, and asked Bill Clinton his reaction to the Trump speech. And this is what I call an instant Clinton classic. Here's what Bill Clinton said. I think you can figure it out for yourself. And then he explained that they weren't staying for the lunch because, quote, we have to go. So that's a good one. I think you can figure it out for yourself. All right. Mr. Evans, welcome in. How do you pronounce your first name, or is that a typo? After you unmute, please.
That's Jereb.
Jereb. Jereb, what kind of name is that? Maybe I should be familiar with it, but I don't think I am.
I get asked that quite a bit, actually. I had a conversation about it yesterday at work. But my mom said it got it out of a baby book. I haven't seen this baby book, and I've never heard of anybody else being named that. But
you know what? It's good to have a unique name on one level. On another level, for a little kid, it might be a nightmare. But you've come through it well, I can tell. Jared, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, and start with, besides where you are, what you thought of the speech.
I'm on this app, kid. I'm from Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I voted for
Donald Trump. Where is Pittsburgh, Kansas?
It's in southeast Kansas.
Okay.
Right, I'm about like 10 or 15 miles from the Missouri border. I actually grew up right in Missouri, and I just moved here about 3 years ago. My mom lives around here.
Got it. How old is she? She's cute.
Yeah.
Look at that. How old are you?
How old are you? 7.
7. Okay. Thank you for joining. We're PG, maybe mostly G, so it's all good.
What is her question?
Yeah, we'll take hers next. Jared, yeah. You got any question about today, the inauguration day?
You know what's going on?
Okay. Well, your dad's got one. Tell folks, you said you were a Trump supporter. What did you like the speech?
Well, I mean, it's not really a whole lot different than what I've been hearing for a while. I mean, I liked his tone. He didn't like it wasn't like his normal stump speeches that he's had. It didn't have a lot of energy behind it. He seemed like he was a little bit more uh brought it down, try to seem gracious about the fact that he's finally won. He doesn't have to deal with all the people coming after him anymore. And it just seemed to be like he's just like lowering it down, getting ready to just, do whatever he said he needed to do.
Okay, that's good. I like that. What are your question or comment that you have? Or you just want to weigh in on the speech, which is fine.
No, I'm just wondering where with nah, I don't really have a question. I just wanted to weigh in on that, I guess. But
all right,
I may have had something, but I don't remember what I was going to say now. She's been kind of keeping my attention.
Yeah, all good. Thanks to the whole Evans family for joining. Grateful to you, and thanks for your speech analysis. That's great. All right, let's go to Brian. Brian, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, what you thought of the speech.
No, I think you're muted, Brian.
Here you go. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Cool. I am in Huntsville, Alabama, the rightful home of the Space Force. I thought the speech was okay. I mean, in the chat, I do agree it was more of a State of the Union, state of my platform than what it could have been at an inauguration. But looking past that, one of the questions I have for you guys in your observations, I think this thread of the relationship between energy, this tech, rise of tech, I won't say oligarchy, but rise of the tech power, and AI is a very interesting one in the next 4 years in the world and the country. I'm just curious of your thoughts of, what are we hearing or what are we expecting between that bond, again, energy, AI, and the rise of tech? Thoughts?
All right. Well, Senator Sununu, this is a lot of what he works on now. So, Senator, over to your
expertise. A little bit. Thanks. It's a great question, and it's something that bears watching. I was trained as an engineer, and the one thing I know about technology is if any politician or just about anyone, even if you have a technical background, if they tell you where a particular technology is going to be in 5 years, run away, right? They don't know. None of us know. I mean, we can make our best guess. We can try to steer capital or resources, from a business perspective, but it's very, very challenging to know. Having said that, as you point out, these AI centers, which are real, are being built today, require tremendous amounts of energy. And to be direct and blunt, there is an incredible irony here that the tech community that for the last decade has crammed clean energy subsidies down America's throat, has suddenly decided that we need an all of the above energy policy in America, because if we don't, they're not going to be able to build the AI centers that they need to make more money. And so I think the emergence of AI, the consumption of the energy, the demands for energy have created a very wholesome rethinking of energy policy. And it's not just about drilling for more oil, but it's about looking at the subsidies we have in place and the regulations we have in place, dealing with permitting and building new transmission and building new plants and exporting natural gas, all of these things. And again, it's being driven in large part because of the energy demands of AI.
All right. Thank you for that, Senator Brian and Dan. Hold on. You see there the coverage. President Trump, Melania Trump coming. He's giving a speech in the Capitol. Maybe I was supposed to know this was happening, but I don't remember seeing anybody talk about this. There's lots of supporters in town, including folks who've gathered here who want to hear from him and are sorry they couldn't be at the swearing in and at the inaugural address. He's still got to go to the arena where the scene, based on what I've seen, was pretty raucous during his remarks. So let's listen in to Vance and Trump giving a speech here.
Mark, is he going to sign any EOs, you think, right this second while there?
Maybe. The whole thing has been so loosey-goosey, and I continue to hear from sources saying contradictory things. It's quite something.
That was, man. That was a good way to start it off. You know, I didn't know exactly what the president would put in that speech, and I hoped to myself that he wasn't going to hold back, and sir, you didn't hold back. That was a hell of a way to start the next 4 years, but I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and I know I speak for the president and for all of us, thank you for making this possible. We love you. We wouldn't be here without you, and we're going to make America great again together for the next 4 years.
Withdrawing from the Paris Peace Accords, as he did 8 years ago, is one of the first actions. And there's already lawsuits against DOJ.
The last thing I'll say is, you know, having stood outside for about 5 minutes to wave goodbye to the Bidens, thank God we moved that thing indoors, because it was a beautiful ceremony and it was cold as hell outside. So, sir, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Vintage Vance, he knows he's not the main act. He's just the opener.
It's that first time he's been called 47.
Oh, look at this beautiful sunny day. We blew it, and then I went outside and we were freezing. You would have been very unhappy. The sun was very deceptive, I will tell you. It is cold out. And I'm sort of saying, you know, that was so beautiful today. Maybe they should do it there every 4 years. Does that make sense? I don't know. Because, you know, the outdoor thing is really good, but it gets a little cold around this time of the year, as some people have noticed. And a lot of times they suffer through it. There was no suffering in that room. It was 72 degrees. It was perfect with the best acoustics I think I've ever heard in a room. This is not so bad either. But I just want to say, you're a younger, far more beautiful audience that I just spoke to. And I want to keep it off the record.
This is why Trump's appealing to a lot of people. There ain't a president in the world who would say that.
Those big shots up there. I don't want to think you're more powerful than them. You look better than them, and I love you.
My guess is there are a lot of donors there. That'd be my guess.
That's in the Capitol Visitor Center. My guess is that crowd are the people who got the members of Congress choice 2 tickets. Every member of Congress, you get, 100 tickets to the inaugural, but there are maybe 2, 3 that are really choice. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's what this crowd is.
In Ohio, he was a great
Most
senator.
of which go to donors or family members.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yep, there are plus ones who seat was taken by Elon Musk. Yep, that's who this is.
Succession didn't work that way, right? But now she's great and he's great. This is a great, beautiful couple and unbelievable career. I just said to him, you are very upwardly mobile, because he hasn't been doing it that long, but he picked it up so quickly. Remember, the first week was a little bit like the fake news was hitting him really hard. And I said, ooh, this may be tough, but after that, it was smooth sailing for him. He took on everybody. He took on the meanest. I don't want to use the word corrupt because we're into a new system, so let's wait till the corruption begins, because it will. But he took on some pretty mean people, and he handled it well. I want to also congratulate Mike Johnson for the job that he's doing. Steve, we gave him a majority of almost nothing. And then I said, to make it tougher on him, let me take 2 or 3 of the people, right? I said, he'll only have to suffer with that for about 3 months. How are they doing, by the way? Are they, is that moving along?
Totally unified.
I said, do you mind if I take this one, that one, and a couple of others? He didn't mind. He can handle it. No, he's a man that's liked by everybody. I've never met a man like this. You've got how many is it, 219 or 220 or something? 220. And of the 220, 219 really like him. I noticed he got 1 negative vote once about 2 weeks ago. But I think even 220 like him, if you want to know the truth. And that's very unusual. I know a lot of nice guys in Congress, and they have 35 people that hate him. So if you have 35 people that hate you and you only have 1 or 2 or 3 votes, you'll have 5, I think. But that's going to be like, you know, the good news is when we get to that 5 number, it's going to feel like a massive majority. you could be really nasty to a couple of them at least, you know? So it's going to feel like hitting your head on the wall and stopping. It feels so good to stop, but he's done a fantastic job. And Steve Scalise is, he's our hero because, you know, I was with him.
Funny, he's so happy and joking compared to that speech.
About being shot.
Yeah.
I was with him. He got some bad ones, and his incredible wife, and she really loves him. You know, you never know about that. I've been with other people.
It's a bunch of quiet
They were
parts out
doing
loud,
poorly, and
particularly the
wife is
Vance
like
stuff, because
looking at her
basically
watch.
saying
She can't get out
I
of
was
the hospital
regretting
fast
picking the
enough.
guy for the first week.
How's he doing? I don't know.
How many politicians speak to each other who have both been shot?
That woman was a mess. She was crying and crying. No, they're going to take him. They're going to take him. I told Steve when he finally woke up, it was a while too. The doctor told me it was the most blood they've ever transfused in any patient. They've never done anything like it.
Again, no president has ever said that on their inauguration day. That's
a great friend of mine.
I don't think any president has ever said that, period.
And what a job you did. It worked out pretty much better than we even thought, right? And I did have a couple of things, you know, to say that were extremely controversial. And between JD and Melania and anybody else that heard, please, sir, it's such a beautiful unifying speech. Please, sir, don't say these things. I said, I'm telling you, it's going to play great. They say, you're right. For this group of people, it's going to play great. You're the only ones I hurt by not, but we had some beauties, didn't we, Melania? She said, sir, calls me sir when she's angry. No.
This is
I'm
crazy.
only kidding. I better say I'm only kidding, or the press is going to pick that one up loud and clear. No, but she said, no, I think it would be terrible. It's such a nice speech. I think it's, you know, it all depends on your delivery. How was the delivery? Was it good?
This is Sinatra and Rickles interlude.
Speech. You can't put things in there that you were going to put in. And I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, you know, it's action, not words that count. And you're going to see a lot of action on the J6 hostages.
So interesting he's saying that in the Capitol Visitor Center.
And I was going to talk about the things that Joe did today with
sweet irony.
Pardons of people that were
or malice aforethought,
very, very guilty of very bad crimes, like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs, where
boy, Mark, if this is the warm-up act.
I mean, what they did is they destroyed and deleted.
See if he mentions the pardons.
All of the information, all of the hearings, practically not a thing left. They deleted all the information on Nancy Pelosi having turned down the offer of 10,000 soldiers. You wouldn't have needed 10,000. You could have had 500, and it would have stopped. Because we may have had 1 million people that day, the people that were there. You don't see any photographs, but we have a lot of great photos. But you don't see those photographs. They don't put them in. They show the people at the Capitol. But I was talking about that. I was going to talk about that. They said, please don't bring that up right now. You can bring it up tomorrow. I said, how about now in front of the I'll bring it up right now. You know, this little time delay is good because we're getting great reviews on the speech. Now watch. They'll take the speech and say, I didn't like it because he left there and he's talked to people. But we're giving you a little more information than we gave upstairs. But no, they pardoned a lot of people. They pardoned, before we even get to today, they pardoned, 33 murderers, absolute murderers, the worst murderers. You know, when you get the death sentence in the United States, you have to be bad because they don't give it much. And he pardoned almost everybody having a death sentence. And if you went through the crimes that were committed, you wouldn't even believe them, the level of violence, the people that were killed, the innocence of people that were killed and children killed by these people. And he pardoned them for whatever reason. He spared them, but they didn't spare the people that they killed. And, you know, who knows what happens in the future. It's one of the worst because a lot of times they let them out early after that. You know, they say you're going to be in for life, but then all of a sudden they get let out for good behavior, and then they go on a rampage. You know, it's one of those little things, right? But I was going to talk about that. But I was really going to talk about the the level of, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to help a guy like Milley? Why are we doing Milley? He was pardoned. What he said, terrible what he said. Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney? I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying.
Mark, it sounds like this might go longer than the inaugural address. And I need to go shovel my father's walk.
I remember years ago.
Thank you very, very much.
Senator, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, Senator. Thank you. Tell your dad hi.
Liz Cheney hated the concept of not going to war with everybody. Let's kill everybody. Let's spend a lot of money on military equipment. Where her father works, right? And but what she did was incredible. Think of it. They destroyed and deleted all of that information that went on for almost 2 years against Trump. And the reason they did, because it was all false. Like the person that said, I tried to strangle a Secret Service agent. That's one of the toughest human beings I think I've ever seen. I actually had a friend saying, please don't change that, sir. You are the coolest sucker in history. Remember, she said, I put my hands around his neck because he wouldn't go to the Capitol. Made up fiction. And I was rebuffed. And the guy on the right is a massive weightlifter, probably stronger than me. Do you think he's stronger than me, honey? You know who I'm talking. Possibly stronger than me. Slightly younger than me, like, I won't say how many years because I don't want to talk about that, but a lot of years. But I had a friend that said, why are you disputing that story? That's the coolest story I've ever heard. That I would attack a karate champion, get slightly rebuffed, and then throw my arms around a guy with a neck about this big. Even though there are bars, there are bars, you can't really do that anyway. So I wanted to talk about that. But all of that stuff got deleted. And the reason it got deleted is they were all caught in lies. Secret Service testified, and they said it didn't happen. Actually, the two guys were very embarrassed. They're suffering because their friends are saying, did Trump really do that to you? But they gained a whole new respect for me. But it was just make-believe stuff. And there were a lot of make-believe stories made up. So rather than suffer the wrath, like the story with Nancy Pelosi, I offered her 10,000 soldiers. She knows it. She admitted it on tape that her daughter made. She's a videographer or whatever you call her, which I'm glad she is. Oh, she can't be in good stead with Nancy. But Nancy said it was my responsibility as she's leaving the Capitol. She said it was, and it was. She's in charge of security at the Capitol. But I offered them up to 10,000 soldiers, even more. One time I said more, as many as you need, but you needed 400 or 500. If 4 or 5, you 10,000, that would be more than the number of people there by lot. But we offered her 10,000. Think of it, 10,000 soldiers. In other words, J6 wouldn't be J6. There would have been no J6. But she rebuffed them. She didn't like it. No, she didn't like it. Maybe she wanted that to happen. But she's guilty as hell. And now we would have to go through the process because they destroyed all evidence. They deleted everything. There's virtually nothing left. The other fake story. And
switch over to MSNBC audio for a second.
And many people came out on our side.
I hope you look back on them. The same pride I have of all you've done. And I'm proud of is that you did it upholding the core values of honesty, decency, and integrity. I mean, no scandal.
Interesting editorial choice to take the Biden speech.
And to represent the best
CNN
of who we
is
are
taking
as
Trump.
Americans. That's not a joke. That's real.
Well, to hear him say this after the pardons is just...
Resolve on council. We also
Yeah, it's all hollow. It all sounds hollow, at least right this moment.
To all your families, thank you for the sacrifices you made. I mean it. For being part of this journey. Every day, I'm deeply moved by all we all did for this country. I really mean it. History's going to mark down just what you did. But the point I want to make today is to make clear in my farewell address, as we all do have we have a lot more to do. We heard the inaugural address today. We got a lot more to do. I know from many years of experience, they're up and down, but we have to stay with it.
Okay, switch
My
back to
dad
Trump.
taught me the measure of a person, you heard me say it before, is how quickly they get back up when they.
I think it's time we all start getting along a little bit because it doesn't make sense. I mean, we literally never get a Democrat vote. They never get a Republican vote, almost. And although there is a bill coming up very shortly that we have a lot of Democrat votes, right? It's going to be a very beautiful bill. We're going to have a deciding, I would say, within a week or so, I think. And it's going to be a very good bill.
It's going to be interesting to
You
see
all
how
know
much
what I'm
MS
talking
and
about.
CNN
So,
cover him live going
I
forward.
just want to thank you all for being here. You have been our fans from day one. Look at all these people all over. You've been our fans. This has been there's never been anything like it. There's never been anything like it. This has been a movement like no movement ever in history for probably any country, let alone this country. You know, if somebody's running for president, and if they go out and they announce they're going to Arizona, they're going to Nevada, they're going to someplace, if you have 200 or 300 people, that would be standard. Ronald Reagan would go out. I mean, outside of the last couple of days where people get a little excited, but even then you have a couple of thousand people. But if you're going to go someplace, any place, any one of the swing states, any one of the other states, I mean, how about the non-swing states? We won Alabama by 48 points. We won Tennessee by massive numbers. Wyoming, we won by numbers that are, nobody's ever seen numbers like that.
Switch back.
And, you know, places like California, we did great, but it's...
A greater honor is being able to serve with all of you. You're incredible. You really are. You really are. Mark my words. History's going to judge what you've done as one of the most significant contributions that's been made by all of America. Look, folks, you know, let me close with that poem you heard me quote before. Seamus Heaney wrote, "Once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice will rise up and open mystery rhyme. You made it rhyme louder than it's rhymed in a long time." I really mean it. We're on the cusp of real change, so let's make hope and history rhyme. I love you all. I'm keeping you too long, but thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Bottom of our heart, thank you. Thank you. Can I go off this
Dan.
way?
Oh. All right. Switch back to Trump, and as we do, Dan, what do you think of those Biden remarks, the parts we heard?
Someone in the chat said it sounded like Dana Carvey, and I totally agree. I mean, it's just, it's hard to listen to him after the events of today, talking about honor and integrity in the office, and
we were winning. We won the Texas border.
just shake your head.
That had never been won. As the governor said, he's doing a good job, the governor, by the way, of Texas. But as the governor said, it hasn't. Oh, did I get lucky? Did I get lucky? Supposing I said, you know, he's not here, but the governor of Texas has done a terrible job. Wow, look at you. You mean we couldn't get you up in the front row? I'll tell you. Supposing I said, JD, the governor of Texas, he's not doing his job. You heard what I said. See, I didn't know you were there. I said he's doing a great job. He's doing a phenomenal job. But now you're going to have a partner that's going to work with you because you didn't have, not only didn't he have a partner, he had people selling the wall, right? We have a fence structure that we worked on, the governor worked on with me. And I didn't love it, to be honest with you. I wanted a nice precast concrete, you know, 40, 50 feet high, like a beautiful, could have been a T-shape, Y-shape. I love construction. I wanted that sucker to go up maybe 50, 60 feet. It would have looked beautiful, a nice Y shape. And they said, the problem is, sir, they climbed that like a rabbit. I said, what do you mean? No way. And they brought some of these guys out. They climbed it like... And the other thing is you hit it with acid and the thing will disintegrate. You know, they have things for concrete. So they needed very hardened steel, very special steel. And then they needed 7,000-pound concrete inside that steel, inside that steel. And then they have a rebar that's the toughest steel made. Very hard to cut. So this is why very little is cut. I mean, it's right. And then they put a anti-climb panel on top. I hated it. I said, it's so unattractive. And I said, why would that work? I don't believe it works. And I went to watch the Border Patrol, gave a display. We had actually 2 sets of climbers. The guys that climb up walls with drugs on their back, I mean, they got like 60, 70 pounds of drug, and they go as fast as you can walk. They go bip, bip, bip. Or we have Mount Everest type climbers. And honestly, the drug guys were much better. I couldn't believe it. The drug guys blew them away, right? But it's true, the anti-climb panel, they couldn't get around it. They just couldn't. When you didn't have it. So sometimes you sacrifice beauty for efficiency. And we did. So we built this wall, and we built over 500 miles of wall. That's why we had such good numbers. The famous chart that came down, very thankfully, the chart that came down on my right, Governor. Had I not looked over there, I'm not speaking right now. You might be speaking here. You want to know the truth? You, JD, and we've got a lot of great people in this party, but I got very lucky, but we had the best numbers we've ever had. But I bought, you know what happens is when you fill it up, it's like water. You fill it up. Now we have 571 miles of wall. And they would always say, you know, when we renovated a wall, so there'd be like a piece of plywood sitting there for 60 years, or a 2x4 sitting for 60 years on the ground and rotting. Because, you know, and they'll say, you didn't build a new wall. Here we're building 50 feet up in the air, 30 feet sections, 50-foot sections, all steel, all concrete, all everything. And all, by the way, they don't even want me to say this, but what the hell, it doesn't take that long time. They're all wired for all of the equipment. We put wires in everything so they can easily wire for all the different types of equipment. And if there's a doubt, we have a wire. Whenever we just look, you just find the wires all over the place up top, so we can just hook it up. We don't have to have wires on the outside, which wouldn't do too well, right? So anyway, so we built an extra 200 miles of wall, and the governor wanted to buy it. He tried to buy it, and they wouldn't sell it to him. He wanted to put it up himself. Could have been done in 3 to 4 weeks, 200 more miles, because when you do it now, they just keep going further out, further out, further out, getting around. So we did an extra 200 miles.
Now, Dan, there's this debate Democrats have about whether Trump has lost his mind and, you know, mental decline and all that. And I mean, this rambling is not unusual, but the guy has so much energy. It's just amazing. I mean, you know, he should give a 30-minute speech. Given this one, he's got to do a bunch more today, and it's like he just a lot of energy for anyone, and particularly a man his age.
I will say, I saw him the other day walking through Mar-a-Lago. He was walking kind of in a gingerly old way, but you're right. When it comes to the performative aspect,
and when he's got adrenaline, you're right. There's no doubt. I mean, you saw it today. You know, sometimes it's easy to confuse this solemn walk for fatigue, but he's obviously shows physical fatigue sometimes and mental fatigue. But on days like this, he's just he is like Bill Clinton. It's like if they said we're adding 10 speeches to the schedule, he'd be like, great, let's do it.
I think he takes energy from this.
He did an unbelievable job.
Back up, please.
He was a very popular governor, but now he's like an unbeatable governor.
There goes Joe Biden.
He was fantastic, and he really was. So. Governor Abbott is he's a great man, great leader, and but it did make him very more. Did you do it? You didn't do that for politics. You did it because you wanted to do the right thing. But I'll tell you, it sure as hell worked for politics too. It's self-preservation. That's right. But no, because the people are demanding it. The people of Texas are demanding it. The people are demanding it all over. So anyway, so we built it, and they wouldn't let us use it. They wouldn't let the governor use it. And other governors, they wouldn't let him use it. But he was the leader of the pack and did a great job. And then we heard about a month ago that not only wouldn't they let us use it, they were selling it. They were going to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar. Now, 5 cents on the dollar then, but today it would cost more than twice as much to build because we bought it like 6 years ago. And it was just sitting on the ground, and that does not do well for the whole thing. But it was just sitting on the ground, and I heard about it, and I called the governor, and I called a lot of people, your attorney general. And here's the story. They were going to buy it, and these are great business people. They were going to buy it for 5 cents on the dollar or less, and they were calling us up, we'll sell it to you for 200 cents on the dollar. In other words, it will cost you twice as much, so it's 200 cents on the dollar. I said,
I was hoping to
"Can somebody
conclude with this
explain that
thing,
to a
but
judge?"
maybe we just
I mean,
going to
how
quit. This
corrupt
thing
is
could
that?
never end.
You'd think they'd say, maybe we'll sell it to you for 20
This will
cents.
lead you into the 6 o'clock
30
show, Mark.
cents,
Exactly.
but not
It's our
200
continuing coverage.
cents.
Let's give them a little
So they were going to
bit
buy
longer.
something for
But I'm inclined to get ready
5
to,
cents, and
because
they
it's
were
going to talk
sell
all
it to us
day.
for a
You know,
fortune. They
there
were
you see
gonna
the
make
plane.
Whoopi.
No
They
longer
have it
Air
down
Force
that
One, even
in
though if you
Fortune
see a picture of it,
magazine,
you'd
they
think
put
that's
it
Air
as the
Force
deal of
One.
the
It's
year,
known
okay?
on this flight by the
You
call
buy
letters
something like that, but it was so
or whatever
corrupt
that's
and so
called.
horrible.
I'm not a big aviation guy.
And when we told that to the
That's
administration,
going to
they
be an
didn't
interesting
care. They
flight.
just kept going forward. They couldn't
Wonder
care
if Biden
less.
will monitor the
And they
coverage
kept
of the
going
pardons.
forward. They knew that they were trying
You know,
to sell
I
it back to
wasn't
us. They
paying
would've sold
attention,
it
Mark,
back
but
to us. We would've
did
ended up
he
buying
go
it.
up
Would've paid
the
probably 50,
formal
60
frontal
cents.
steps
Who knows?
for this last one, or
But
did
they
it would
could
be
use it to
ironic that
scrap
he went
metal,
up those
but then
back
they made a
steps
much better
again?
deal. They could just
Yeah.
buy it
Did
and sell
anybody
it to us
notice?
for
I didn't notice. Good
15,
question.
20 times what they paid.
I think they're
20
the belly
times.
steps, but I may
Think
be
of it,
wrong.
Like
Yeah.
20 times what they paid. And
Either
we
way,
let
there's
it happen.
resonance.
And the governor with his attorney general, Ken Paxton, they made a fantastic.
Because I don't think any president, former president
He's
who's
pushing
taken
that
that
pretty
flight
good
has
by
used
people,
anything
right?
but the main
They
steps.
said, you got
would be
you
my
got
Yeah,
a
they
guess.
great
usually
attorney
wave and
general. They
the
should
whole
leave
nine
him
yards.
alone.
Yeah, that's what I
He
mean.
was with me.
That, yeah, kind of
But Ken
iconic
and
shot.
the governor went to court, and a judge actually became incensed and actually called for an investigation. How could a thing like this happen? So he stopped it. So we're waiting to put that wall up. And now that you have a new president, that wall will go up so fast. The governor will complain, sir.
So obviously, one thing that's
This
going on
is
here to
Greg
state the most
Abbott,
obvious
sir.
something possible.
Please,
You know,
the
he had
wall
to
is
mostly be
going
on
up too
prompter at
fast.
the
Please
formal
don't do
speech.
that.
So
You know,
I think part of why this is going on and on is he's
No,
getting to
we're
give
gonna
one of
win
his
too much.
Rickles Sinatra riffs and doesn't have to use
We'll
the
do this
prompter.
with the
They probably
wall.
thought this was going to be
Governor
like 2
Abbott goes,
sentences.
sir, the wall is going up too fast. We can't take it. We just can't take it. No, I think you'll be very happy if the wall goes up too fast, right? But we'll get that dude and we'll work with you on that. But it was a great decision by a great Texas judge, right? And it was beautiful, beautiful to watch. He stopped them right in their track. I mean, they were literally loading the stuff onto trucks. It was terrible. Honestly, it was terrible. And he wouldn't take it. So I'm so glad I mentioned that they have a really good governor in Texas. And I swear, I didn't know he was here. I swear to you, it sounds like a setup. I didn't know you would end. Did I get lucky? I said the right thing. Because there have been moments when I wasn't so happy with him, you know? But not too many, I can tell you that. So anyway, it's good to see you too, Governor. Great. But I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. I recognize so many of you. It's so crazy. But this has been a long journey. This was a journey that started in 2015, probably started 20 years before that. People used to say, you're going to run for president? You're going to run? And I always said, no, I don't want. And then one day I said, let's give it a shot. And what I talked about then was the border, too. I think it probably was the #1 issue for me. Back in 2015, 2016, I talked about the border. And now I talked about the border, but this border is much worse. We fixed the border. It was totally fixed. There was nothing to talk about. 2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged, but that's okay. It was a rigged election. You know the only thing good about it? It showed how bad they are, showed how incompetent, and frankly, historically, this is a much bigger event. If that would have gone like it should have. The bad thing about it is some bad things happen, like a lot of people in our country that wouldn't be in our country right now. So, you know, that's the bad part. But I will say that it started in 2015, and right from the beginning, we went to the top. Day one, they announced Trump, and Trump went to #1 and stayed there for the whole primary. And then we took on Hillary. She didn't look too happy today. We took on Hillary. A very nice person, but we took on Hillary and we defeated Hillary. Then we
incredible
did much better the second time in 2020.
Mark, I'll be curious. You know, the White House has the former presidents, and there's like a
10,
snippet
12
about
million
them.
votes than we did the
If
first
he will
time.
put in Biden's,
No
he stole the
president has ever
election.
gotten that many more votes.
I'll be very curious if he does it.
9 million more than anybody else had ever gotten. And they said we lost.
Good call.
And because of that, I said to Melania, what do you think? And she said, you want to do this again? And had we lost, and had I thought we lost, I wouldn't do it again, because that's like the ultimate poll, right? But I knew how well we did, and this time we made it too big to rig. It was so big. They tried. They tried like hell. But They tried to do it, and around 9:02 they gave up. Last time they did bad things. At this time they just said, yes. You know, I don't know if you saw, Mr. Speaker, in Washington, they had placards. They were all set to march. They thought it'd be closer. A gentleman asked me, a very respected gentleman asked me yesterday, how come the polls were so wrong? They showed you winning, but not in a landslide. I said, because people that are true Trumpers are so angry at the whole polling system and at the writers, the fake news, that they don't want to talk to anybody. So when you call somebody from Trump, who are you voting for? They say, it's none of your business. I'm not telling you. And that was probably 40% of the people they called. So they would discard that one, and they didn't show that. And then when the election happened, you know, the vote came, and it was much different, much higher than, we're going to win, but they really thought, they couldn't believe the one man said, I mean, it was so much higher. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by millions of votes, which is hard for a Republican. I'll tell you who came through. The unions came through. The auto workers were great. The Teamsters were great. The firemen were great. I think almost every union was great. The only one that weren't great, although Sean was great, and the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, was fantastic. But generally speaking, the head of the union was against Trump, but the union would be with us for like 80, 85%. Look what we did with the auto workers in Michigan. Look what we did with the Teamsters. The Teamsters were unbelievable. They were a solid Democrat vote, and they voted for Trump. So we had a great experience. This has been, now we have to go to work and get it done, because we have to do something that's going to be great. We're going to turn our country around, and we're going to turn it around fast. And I think this was a better speech than the one I made upstairs, okay? I think this was better, JD. I think this was much better, and I got to see my friend. So, Governor, take care of yourself. You call me, we'll start working. You know what that means with him? He's going to be calling me tomorrow morning at about 6. And I said, how about next week? You call me and we're going to get it started real fast. We'll really help you a lot. You've done a fantastic job protecting something which is, it's not supposed to be for the states. And amazing job you've done. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody. And I have a First Lady who's been incredible. She's been incredible. I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get hell when I say this, but her feet are absolutely aching. You know, those heels. And we thought we were leaving. We were going home. Sir, would you be able to go down and say hello to some of your other fans that are here? I said, oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Did you get to see pretty clearly the picture, I hope? Good. That's good. But because you wouldn't want to make the same speech again, right? But she said, darling, I love you so much, but my feet are killing me. I said, honey, let me just see how far it is. I asked the person. Oh, not that long, maybe 400 or 500 yards. That's 5 football fields. I said, can you make it? She said, we're going to make it no matter what. We're going to make it because we have to get, right? Right? And then we went out to the helicopter, though, just prior to this, and said goodbye. And it's a custom, and the wind is blowing like crazy. And with the hat that she's wearing, she almost blew away. We almost lost off her. She was being elevated off the ground. She almost blew away. No, so we all appreciate it, because she's been a great First Lady, a beautiful and a great First Lady. And they love our First Lady. You know, JD, whenever I make a speech, right. I see
winding down.
We love our First Lady. We love, and they do, and they should. She's great. So I just want to thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to thank everybody. And I felt that, I said to JD, should we give him the A treatment, the B treatment, the C, the D, or the F? You know what the F is? Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Governor.
He's back.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah. All right, you can take the quad down. A few things before we close up. All right. Reaction to the pardons. Tony Fauci and General Milley seemed pleased and basically said they didn't do anything wrong, but they don't want to spend their time on Earth dealing with potential prosecutions. Donald Trump, the mean is as significant as the message. You might have noticed in the last few days, he's done the thing he does, which is some reporters have his phone number and they'll call him and he'll just do interviews. He'll pick up and do an interview. He did a long interview with Kristen Welker the other day. I've never seen this well, I shouldn't say that. It's possible the text message came from an aide and not from Trump, but according to NBC News, Trump sent a text message to NBC where he described Biden's decision to pardon his family members as, quote, disgraceful, and claimed without evidence that many of those pardons, quote, are guilty of, all caps, major crimes. So that's his reaction. A few things I want to show you to clean up some loose ends. First of all, 201, John Fetterman correctly noticed, I think Dan and others noticed, there's the shorts. And I'm a big fan of casual dress, but, I'm also a fan of ceremony and tradition, and that's kind of crazy. Dan was right, 202. Joe Biden did go up the steps, the small steps, and passed up the iconic shot of presidents. I bet we could go on Google Images and see it all. Former presidents walking up the big steps, waving from the top, and there you see him saluting from the little steps. And as I said, whichever way he did it was there'd be some resonance. If he'd done the big steps, it would point out that he wasn't able to for a lot of the end of his presidency, and obviously the little steps is representative. Paul Wilkie, 101. Paul Wilkie found the perfect way to think about the Melania hat. A new Uptown Girl. That's Christy Brinkley from the Uptown Girl video. We're going to break now. Donald Trump's going to talk all day. We could stay on straight through 7, but we're going to break. We'll rejoin you at 6 o'clock. And a reminder that our Pearl Street Warehouse event here in the Washington, D.C. area in D.C. is February 2nd, coming up soon, a couple weeks, 5 p.m. D.C. time. If you want to buy tickets for that event, Sean, Dan, and I will do an on-stage in the evening edition of the morning meeting, and then take your questions, and there'll be special guests and community members, and as they say in the pitch business, you won't want to miss it. So we'll see you February 2nd back here in Washington. And again, do not come asking me for tickets once they sold out. The fire marshal is a good friend of mine. I would never cross her. So do not think you can get in once they've sold out. Dan, closing thoughts. I also want to mention, which you mentioned at the top, the passing of Cecile Richards, longtime activist for reproductive freedom, someone who Dan and I both knew, and just a lovely, lovely person. I knew both her parents a little bit, and they were incredibly proud of her. And her daughter has worked over the years for Kamala Harris, is also a great person, just a wonderful family, and an incredibly sad loss for lots of Democrats and others around the country. Dan, closing thoughts on Cecile Richards or anything else you'd like to say?
I'll just say on the president here, I may not have loved the speech, but what he said is what he has run on, what he ran on, and what he has said for the last 4 years. And so here we go. May he be successful. And where Democrats disagree, they should stand up and advocate. But wish him the best, and we're off.
Yeah. I don't know where he's going to go now. We still don't know where he's signing executive orders, whether he's headed to the basketball stadium, hockey arena, whatever you want to call it. Eventually, by the end of the day, he will get back into the Oval Office, and this incredible ballet that occurs from when the time the Bidens leave until Donald Trump shows up, where they switch out all the stuff and some pictures. The pictures change on the walls, and the stuff in the Oval changes, and the residents, obviously, their stuff gets moved out. The Bidens have left. I believe the plane took off. So the Bidens have left, re-entered the Trumps, Donald Trump, Melania Trump, and all of the things we'll be looking at, relations with Congress, relations with world leaders, relations with inside the administration, and of course, Donald Trump's relationship with his constituents are all going to be big topics for us. 6 o'clock tonight, I'll be back 2/8 tonight. We'll round up some of the best sound and video and pictures from the day. there will be a lot of stuff that happens between now and 6, so we'll have all that for you. And we'll talk about, with some guests, we'll talk about that. And as always, be eager to hear what you all think. So please rejoin us at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then Dan, Sean, and I will be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you for watching. See you at 6 p.m.
And Mark,
a suspiciously large motorcade